So I'm here with Jason Turner, who back in 2004 was a Navy sailor and a petty officer third class aboard the USS Princeton when he became the unwitting witness to the famous Tic Tac UAP. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks
So
a lot.
Jason, I know you had a unique perspective on what happened in 2004. If you don't mind just telling us, what your position was at the time, what that entailed, and where you were, what you were doing back in 2004.
Yeah, I was a logistics specialist. Back then it was a storekeeper. And I was actually taking a computer chip up to CES, which is the ship's signal exploitation space. And that's where where they intercept all different radio traffics and things like that. And I'd happened to go up there, signed into the log, went into the space, and to my left, I saw the video playing as I was there, and I was in there for 10 minutes at most. So, and then when I walked in to turn this thing over and get it, get the other one back so that we could take it and send it off and have it repaired, I see the video play. So, I'm talking to my buddy that's in there, and I'm like, because prior to that, we had all around the ship, there were things that were happening that we all knew. The kind of the demeanor of the ship had changed a bit over the past couple of days. And, I'd asked my buddy if that's what was happening. Is this real world or is this training? And he's like, no, this is real world. Real world meaning like this is really happening. This isn't part of the simulation that they were doing. While I was in there, I saw it. I watched the video. It played between 7 to 10 minutes. It did loop at the end one time when I was in there. So then it started playing again. And I think there's a lot of people that are questioning like what happened on there. Because if it looped, well, did it loop again? No, it just looped one time when I was there. When you walk in, it was to the left. There was a computer screen there that had had the image going on it. So a lot of questions have come up, like what did it look like? What was it doing? And I even heard Chad Underwood had said that, it was a longer video, but it wasn't like something spectacular. I disagree. What may not be spectacular to you and to other people, may be spectacular to these people.
So Chad Underwood was the pilot who captured the FLIR video, right?
Right.
And Chad Underwood himself has come forward and said that there was a longer video.
Right. And that's something when people they question about it and they say, well, this is what DC is sending out, that this is all they have, and I don't believe them at all, because there is a longer video there. It's a lot clearer. It's not nearly as clear as you would think, like you're looking at just a 1080p. It's not 1080p, but the numbers are clear, the image is clearer. So yeah, when watching this thing, like what you see the minute and a half on the video that's been released, that's just a small snippet of what is there. So there are times where the Tic Tac has moved off screen, and you do see him turning and trying to get this thing back, get lined up on it, but it's moving it's like it starts from point A and then goes to point B at one speed. So it'll start here and go here. It's like it has its own mind, like I'm going to go this fast to this point and then stops.
Do you have a top secret clearance or something to be in there?
Yeah, I have a top secret. And a lot of people that are either in supply, there are a lot of different people that have different clearances. Some of them have interim secrets, secret, and top secret. I happen to have a top secret. So I was able to go into the room with that particular, what do you call it, computer chip.
Mm.
And so, yeah.
Do you know for what purpose it was playing on screen? Were the guys in there, were they just watching it themselves, or were they working on it, or were they sending it out? Or?
Yeah, I have no idea what they were doing. Again, I was there by happenstance, and then I saw this. So I call myself the lucky witness.
Right.
So and the one that kind of slipped by, and now I've come forward, and I'm glad I have, because it's really as small and insignificant as my portion of this whole thing seems. Because if you look at Gary, and you look at Kevin, you look at Fravor, you look at PJ, they all have some really big roles in this thing. But then, like, the one, the one time that someone has extra information that, you know, and that's where I decided to come forward.
Your role is not trivial in my mind at all, because it's additional information and it's corroborating information. It's not just, it doesn't stand alone. It's consistent with what Chad Underwood said, the very man who took the footage, that
Right.
there is this longer video. And the reason I actually see your perspective being so important, I want to include in this, is because we're trying to figure out where this stuff went, right? Like, if Gary Voorhees and PJ Hughes are right, that these guys landed and took the data, where did it go, and where is this original video, and why is what we're seeing just a small clip, like you're saying?
Right. Right. And that's the key here, is like, where is this stuff? They have it, but where? Who's got it? Why are they not showing the whole video of what I saw? And again, it goes back to what Chad said. A lot of it's uninteresting to him, but it's not uninteresting to us, to see this stuff. And I think that's where it needs to be released. I advocate for the whole thing being released. I also question, why is there only one video? If the commanding officer of the air wing was the first one to see it, chased it, watched it, why is there no video from him? Only
So,
Chad.
so why didn't Fravor have a FLIR pod or some camera or something?
Something, you
I don't
know,
know.
and that's something that's really bugged me. And this is this is the first time I've talked about this. Is it's really bugged me since day one that we only have one video out of how many planes?
Right. And if Fravor had a video, we would have seen that up close that he describes.
Right. Not just Underwood.
That is weird.
And just sitting there thinking about it. I mean, I see your face. You're like, oh.
I'm thinking, was it maybe because Fravor didn't know what he was about to encounter? He was just out there, and they're like, "All right, we got some real world tasking." They sent him out to the intercept,
Well,
and
to
then they
that,
saw it.
just ask anyone about fights on, tapes on.
So
You know,
so you typically a tape would be playing, or it would be recorded
that's, that's the understanding.
with
So,
with
Dave Beatty, he would have more. Even though he wasn't in the military, Dave Beatty has so much information, pertinent information, that that dude knows more than I do about this whole thing. And I'm like, like, man. So yeah, Dave Beatty would be the one that to really, even Kevin too. He was the air controller. He knows a lot more about that, and I don't think anybody's really publicly asked that question. Why are there no other tapes? And that's why I'm like, something's wonky here.
right.
you know,
What more can you tell us about the tape itself? Because I know in your mind it's all obvious because you've told it a bunch, but for someone you've never told it to, could you describe this video from scratch? What the object looks like, features and all, what those movements look like, if they're unusual to you?
Yeah, so in the video, you do see a clearer image. I've heard David Fravor speak about it having appendages, like L-shaped appendages out of the bottom. The video I saw wasn't that clear, so you could see the appendages, but you couldn't tell if they were like hockey puck or hockey stick appendages, or to me it just looked like some two small appendages sticking out of the bottom. The outside of this thing, there was no windows, there was no heat signature, nothing. And when this thing, when it moves, like what you see in the video, the original video, the one that got released, when it like turns left and it takes off, it's like 100 times faster, than what you see there. That's a slow movement from left to right. The video didn't show it doing like, going from one place to up to down to left to right. It would make its maneuvered left or right. Vertically, it would go vertically. But like it didn't have to like change its direction. It was whichever way it decided to go. If that's our technology, or if it's not our technology, it needs to be, because that it's incredible. And to pull those kind of G's, I don't think a human could ever really, unless there was some kind of manipulation of time and space and gravity, to get something going that fast and stopping that fast and redirecting that fast. It would literally rip your guts out. It's moving that fast. I think the more information we get out there, people can really start connecting the dots, and
Yeah.
that's why I've made myself available on Twitter. I don't even use Twitter occasionally, but like I've reconnected everything, just because there have been people that ask those questions, and I think they need to be answered. And throughout history, nobody's been able to get to the actual witnesses, and I feel like that's where we as Nimitz witnesses need to make ourselves available to the public at any time. If I don't get back to somebody on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, eventually I will, and I try to stay on all the videos there, to answer questions if people, because you can never really hit 100% of the questions that people are going to have, and I feel like just being available, making ourselves available, changes the game.
Completely
For
agree.
everyone. And
Completely agree.
and I feel like if there's other people out there who were a witness to this, come forward. Make yourself available to everybody. Make yourself available, because the more, and there was at least 400 or 4,000 people on that ship, on the Nimitz, and I know 400 on ours. But at the end of the day, a lot of people they're struggling, because they're like me. They don't want to come into the public eye, and I think just being able to come forward and share your experience, share your story, even if it's just a minuscule part, it helps paint that whole picture.
Is there anyone else you think could come forward that's like on the fence right now?
Yep, there's a couple people that are there. They're just they don't want to deal with the scrutiny.
So I don't know if this would be any consolation to them, but my last interview that I posted about a minute before we got on is with this guy named Ralph Blumenthal. He's a New York Times reporter, and he broke those stories back in 2017. He said he talked to a bunch of the crew members on the Nimitz and on the Princeton, and his whole emphasis is that we've got to like vet this like any other serious subject matter, and the more credible the witnesses, the more credible the reporting, the better the data, the better the information is, and the more likely people are going to believe it.
We've got the documentation to back where we were, what we were doing, when we were doing it, how we were doing it. Some of these other people, they're on the train, and they want a piece of the pie.
Were you aware of the guys landing on the helicopter and kind of confiscating the data from the ships?
Originally, I when I first come out, I was talking to Gary and Kevin about it, and I did see that, but it was a totally different. It was a totally different operation that was happening. So I didn't see, and a lot of people don't understand, on a ship, we are so compartmentalized. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, but they cohesively work together. And so say there was someone that was landing in a helicopter, right? You may think, man, it's a small ship. It's only 55 feet wide, 567 feet long. It's an everyday job to us. And like, I'm not concerned with what they're doing, and they're not concerned with what we're doing. Mm-hmm. Until we need each other, we have no use for each other in that moment.
Right.
So, knowing those things that are happening, a lot of people, specifically on the Nimitz, are not going to be knowing. I mean, we're small, they're huge. And you want to talk about being compartmentalized, those ships, like there's people there you probably don't even know on that ship. Everybody on our ship, since there was only just over 400 people when I was there, you know everybody on that ship. You know who they are. You know their attitudes. You know whether you like them or not. And when you interact with people, just because you're in, say, you're working in SES or up in combat, and I'm down in supply, or somebody's over in the engine rooms, you talk.
Do you think that FLIR video, the longer form version that you saw, would have been taken when those same people took the data from Gary?
I want to say yes, but I have no clue. Again, I don't know what happens in their workspace.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, I mean, Kevin and Gary and Sean, they don't know what goes on in our workspace, because again, we're so compartmentalized. We're only really concerned with our job, until we're made to be concerned about something else. That's what we do to make our ship run effectively.
Had you ever seen an aircraft maneuver like the one you saw in the video?
Never. I've never seen something like that.
And what was so different? Could it have been a regular drone, like a DJI commercial drone or something?
I mean, who knows what they had? Not that's available to the public. Who knows what government has? They're always 10 years ahead of us. That the general public, but the way that this thing operated, no, it was like it wasn't affected by gravity. There was no sonic booms. There was no, again, in the video, there's no heat signatures. There's no windows. There's no doors. There's nothing. So again, if it's ours, I hope it's ours. If it's someone else's, stand by, because it was crazy.
It would be bad news if it's someone else's.
Yeah. And here's another thing. Kevin was talking about, like, if we were off the coast of, say, Iran, and this happened to us, and we were in a wartime situation, this could really pop off something severe. Because if it's entering the airspace around our ships, and we don't know who they are, why they're here, and you go to engage this thing, think about how easy it would be to start a conflict simply based on that.
It's a great point. Ralph Blumenthal, the New York Times reporter, he just came out with a story about, like this week maybe, about these recent hazard reports from the Navy on the East Coast from around 2014 to 2015, Virginia Beach, and same thing. Like 3 of these objects appeared in restricted airspace there. So these pilots are submitting hazard reports saying we're concerned about our the flight risk it poses.
Right. And I mean, it makes sense. I mean, think about it. Like, I mean, even back in 2004 when this happened, like, we had the Princeton was like the test ship that we used to test all kind of equipment with. And with the Spy 1 Bravo, it was the test platform that we used with this. And like, it was amazing what we were able to do with that ship. And again, to give credit to Gary and Kevin, they're the ones running that Spy, the Spy 1 Bravo. At the end of the day, I'm the skeptic of the bunch. I want to believe that it's ours, or and it's hard. It makes me question things, because like, you have this idea of what reality is, and then this happens, and then it just blows your mind, and now I question everything.
Yeah, man. I've been trying to. My whole goal has been to just figure out, is it our military tech or is it not? And I feel like if the whole not, that could take 1,000 years to figure out what it is. But if we could just rule out our own military tech, that opens up a whole lot of new possibilities.
And that's where I think, at the end of the day, the biggest questions from us is, what was it? Whose was it? Where did it come from? What was it? And why are we not getting answers? There's a lot of, we all have these thoughts. The whole crew, we all have these thoughts, and it's frustrating at times, and that's why we created UAPX. We want to go see if we can find something similar to this on our own.
So what's your role in UAPX, and are you going to go out on those expeditions coming up?
Yeah, I'm the logistics and finance officer
Cool.
with UAPX, and I probably will be going out with them. We're going to have to push them back, of course, because of the pandemic. But I think by this time next year, we should be, because we finally got all of our stuff up and running on the website. Got all of our bank accounts set up so that we can receive donations. And so yeah, I mean it's coming together. It's just taking a little time, and then now that this happened, it really set. I mean, it set the whole country back.
Yeah. Let me ask you before I forget, were you aware back in 2004 of any recent systems upgrades in terms of radar and other systems that had
No,
just, no?
again, I stayed in my lane. We don't really. I like if we went into the yards. Sure, yeah, we knew things were happening, but again, if it didn't pertain to my work center, I had no clue what was there. I just knew we were there. They were doing work, and then we would go out and test things.
Yeah. So another question I had is, Gary and Kevin have conflicting views on whether or not it was a test. And Kevin thinks that the government wouldn't layer a test on top of one of his tests. He had coordinated tests like those. Gary, on the other hand, thinks that they would, so long as they could get away with it and not be held accountable. Where do you stand on that particular issue?
I have no clue. Like I would want to say that the government wouldn't do that, and intentionally put something in our airspace that could potentially start something, and pop something off. Why? Why would they want to chance that? Because, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, the other spooky thing is that Kevin, the way he described them, almost just like kind of birds that would just go back on their kind of about their business once the guy stopped chasing them. And, it was almost like you would think if we were testing something, it would be a very isolated test. Like, we'll go fly out the Tic Tac on the 14th alone, and we see how they react, and that's it. Get all the data, be out. But this
Right.
was like going on, almost organically. And
Yeah,
then
the whole time.
these guys pick up on it. It's like, oh shit, they picked up on it. Let's collect it.
Right. And that's a good point. I don't think they're going to intentionally put pilots and equipment in danger without unless Fravor knew about it. You know what I mean? And that's another thing is like, could he have? Who knows? Because he was the commanding officer of that squadron.
Never thought about it once.
I just think about these things, man. Like
every scenario is worth considering. Yeah.
I mean, I never rule anything out.
Right. I mean, especially in a topic that's so riddled with like contradiction and deception and secrecy, and it's hard to know what you're getting.
Yeah, and that also goes back to the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing in the military, but we all work together as a cohesive unit.
Right.
And it's just a question to pose. It is, who if it was a test, who knew about it? If it wasn't a test, then of course no one's going to know about it. But if it was, who knew? Did the COs of the ship know? Did the COs of the squadron and the ships know? And I don't feel like that is the correct avenue there. I don't think that's it at all.
Wouldn't there be a link between whoever the commanding officer was who told, I guess, Gary on your ship to hand over this stuff to whoever landed on the helicopter? Wouldn't that person know or have a better idea of who these people were? Were they Air Force? And then we'd have a better idea of where that information went next.
Right. Ryan was there. He saw it happen. PJ saw it happen on the Nimitz. Gary saw it happen on the Princeton. And each one of them have all said the same thing. And it's fairly easy to see if somebody is wearing a uniform, if it's Navy, or even though the flight uniform is going to be the same, the patches are all going to be different. So you can tell the difference between Air Force and Navy. And, that's Gary and Ryan and PJ have all had the same story. And we didn't even speak to each other once it all just kind of fell into place. When someone asked the question, they answered, gave it here, and it's like, whoa. Because if you take everyone's perspective from where they were at the time when all this went down, and I sat here and just kind of analyzed what everybody was saying, and I'm like, wow, this really paints like this whole picture of what was happening. And there's so much consistency between the stories that are being said. Again, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, and to have all of these stories matching from different perspectives, that's going to be very, very hard to do and remain consistent.
Yeah. It's a bulletproof story, man. It doesn't matter which angle you look at it from. It's a bulletproof story, and it just leads you to wonder what it was. And that's why that question of, is it even a military technology, is too broad, because here I am, I'm talking to former military, right? Like you guys, you were the military, and our own military doesn't know what this is. And it seems like even at the highest levels, the DoD itself is willing to say these are truly unexplained objects. They're maybe not extraterrestrial, but we can't explain them with our own scientists.
Yeah. And that's what I see a lot of people running with that. And they're like, well, see, the government said they're unidentified, so it's confirmed UFO. And I'm like, okay, it's confirmed unidentified.
Right.
It's not confirmed what it was, where it's from. And I think that's where a lot of people, they hang on every single word, especially when it comes from the Pentagon or the records department. And people really need to like paint this picture with a broad stroke, because if you hang on every word, you yourself are gonna find ways to say, well, this is not correct because that person said this. So, and you've got to, when you have people like us who are just, enlisted guys, we have nothing to lose by it. We have nothing to gain really, other than information. And I think that's where none of us have profited off of this monetarily. And it's not about money. I mean, look where I live. I live out in the middle of the woods in a beautiful home, and it's not about money. It's about finding the answers, finding the truth.
Man, gem after gem. I'm telling you, this is going to be a great interview, all cut up, especially for the documentary too.
That'll be good, man. I mean, I told you, I'm a fairly honest person when it comes to like, and I try to live my life the way I teach my kids to is I can handle the truth. I can't deal with a lie. We can't move forward with a lie. Even if the truth hurts, I can still work with the truth.
At any point when you came out about this, did you have any fear? Were you ever looking over your shoulder?
I still do. I'm just waiting for the day that somebody pulls up in my driveway. It's like, hey, shut your mouth. Until that day, I'm going to talk.